Hello and welcome to What a Guy Wants. We are your hosts, Coach Ali and Coach Yogesh, bringing you content every single week on all things men. And today's conversation is all about men and humor. And as you know, that humor is something that's really powerful. Humor has the power to create. Also, humor has the power to destruct. Humor has the power to repair, and humor has the power to mend. Humor has the power to sting. So, with humor being such a powerful tool available to us all, what are your thoughts on when I say the words man and humor, Yogesh?
Great introduction, firstly. And yeah, the first thing that comes up to me is the positive side of a sense of humor. Generally, as a relationship coach, what I've learned is men who have a good sense of humor, and this is all subjective because everyone has a different style, everyone prefers a different style. Someone might find something funny and someone might not find it funny. But men who have a good sense of humor are seen as more attractive by women. Where does it come from? I think it comes from having a sense of humor means you are creative, as you just said, innovative, and also you have a seed of intelligence going in. So intelligence is attractive, confidence is attractive, creativity is attractive. So for me, when I hear sense of humor, we've seen it all along where women like funny guys. We have a ton of comedians who have huge followers and they might not look as good as conventionally attractive, but you'll see they have a lot of women who follow them, who like them, who want to be with them. And it's because they're funny. And in that word fun, funny, fun, the word fun is what women prefer. Someone who's fun, chill. I guess from that perspective, having a sense of humor has tremendous positive effects.
Yeah, so there's some research, I was just like looking into this topic before we joined in, and I actually found that men actually are the ones who love cracking jokes, and women actually are the ones who actually appreciate jokes rather than the ones cracking jokes. And
Yeah.
there was this, I don't remember the stand-up comedian's name, and what she said was that whilst when she's on stand-up comedy, right, in all these years, she only got approached once by a man, whereas after a stand-up comedy event, if it's a man speaking, he's being approached by a lot of women. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting how this puzzle fits in.
Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful point and a great perspective.
And I'm also curious to let's just go a bit deeper in terms of it. So, what's the link between a relationship and humor?
Great question. I would say, firstly, when we laugh, when we find something funny, we release oxytocin, which you would know is also a love hormone. So, a release of oxytocin automatically builds connection, builds a bond. So, you see a lot of successful marriages or a lot of healthy marriages or partner relationships are those in which the couple have their inside jokes and they generally have a similar taste and sense of humor and they also laugh together because that makes them bond together. So for me, the sense of humor and relationships, that's the biggest connection of oxytocin. In my own personal life, if I may, I've seen I connect with when I like someone, I generally pull that person's leg even more. So if I find someone endearing, I would pull their leg, be playful with them. So that's me trying to create a bond with that person. And if I go even more further back in my life, how boys bond, how I've seen my high school circle, how we bonded. I went to an all boys school. So basically, we mostly bonded on going to a particular activity like playing pool, going for bowling. But mainly, even within that, it was mainly bonding on personal jokes, inside jokes, roasting each other, pulling someone's leg. It almost borderline went towards bullying, but it was always someone roasting someone and everyone having shared laughters.
Yeah, so great points there. So I completely like I'm there with you that it's something that humor comes so naturally for us, right? So to build a bond, to build a connection, humor is a tool that we all use and we use it so subconsciously. And
Yep.
at the same time, I'm also curious to know when you went back, right, to when you were in school. So where does teasing or pulling a leg end and where does bullying start?
Yeah. It's a very fine line, right? Because I have seen it. So I've now spoken of how I've teased or pulled a girl's leg who I liked. So it's basically, hey, I like you, this is endearing. So that's the, I've seen from that perspective, it's the innocent intention and a loving intention. Where does it actually go towards actually a put down is such a thin line, such a fine line. Because in the quest of being a funny guy, I've seen myself making fun, especially with my younger brother. So it's also a very guy thing to like not bully your younger brother, but like tell him off. You're also a little bit more mature, older than him. So I saw myself pulling my younger brother's leg, but I also did it somehow because I didn't approve of some things he did. So it was borderline bullying, and I know personally he didn't feel good about it. So I guess just thinking about it right now for the first time, if the other person is feeling off about it, and really we know, truly, if we are in tune, the energy speaks when we pull someone's leg and we do that and they feel good about it, they playfully banter with you and so forth, or they're feeling off and feel like they're hurt. So I guess that is the telltale sign, if I may, about that. Another thing that's coming up for me right now is how men banter while playing a sport. Like for me, playing a sport has one of the objectives of being competitive and winning. I love winning. You know what? I'm going to be very competitive, play it hard. But the other aspect is just talking a lot of shit. Just talking shit, which I call trash talking. In the Australian lingo, they have something called sledging. They took it too far with mental disintegration. So just if they saw something soft in someone, they would really probe, so that that person is that distracted, that triggered, that angry, and then they get the wicket or they get the competitive advantage. So I would say, see how triggered the other person is because of what you're saying, and what are your goals. Like, just verify within you, are you looking to trigger someone else? Because there are people who are very triggered and would want to trigger you. So that's their style of joking, and then they say, you know what, I'm just testing where you are at. I'm testing if you're mentally strong or not. But it's actually, I'm very triggered and I'm going to trigger you, push your buttons, and I find it funny. But is it really funny?
So I would almost say that would come as bullying. That's how I would see it. Because if I'm triggered, right, and my intention is to trigger you, then subconsciously what I'm doing is that I'm telling myself that I need to feel better about myself. So in order to feel better about myself, I need you to feel worse about yourself. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to attack you in a way which is not like where humor is we laugh at something, whereas bullying can be we laugh at you. It can almost be there. And generally when, I've been guilty of it as well. It's not like I haven't. So when we're in a group, right, and somebody starts off on someone where it comes around as it's almost like stinging or it's like bullying. What happens is that in order to fit in as a part of the group, in order to be a part of the group, even if I found that joke inappropriate, right? I understand it now why I was doing it, but I would keep quiet and I would continue that laugh. But at the same time, the mind knows, right? The conscious mind, there's a part of you that's having fun, but there's another part of you that is like, okay, you know what? This is not right. This is like not a to-go zone. And what's interesting is that if that person reacts, right? And again, it's more like what you're doing is that when you've cornered someone like that, you're pumping their body with cortisol. What is cortisol? It's a fight or flight hormone. And if that person says something back and it's actually pressured and takes objection, it's objection, the mask that I've seen myself use and I've seen other men use as well, like, oh, you know what, this guy is a sensitive guy, this is overly sensitive. And the word sensitive, right, is almost like seen as having a negative connotation to it because it feels like it's weak, and it's more about no matter what, I need to look like a tough man. And we've all been through it, so we already know that, being at the receiving end of it is that we're still laughing at the joke, but it's stinging. And when it stings, we carry that feeling all the way home, and it's somewhere down there plays on our mind as well. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. I think I've been on the receiving end of it numerous times, and I've never retracted or given back because in the fear or just to maintain that image that I'm not weak. So that is something which is very true, very well said actually. Another thing that's coming up is that when the joke becomes personal, right? I think there's a code there. There are a lot of where there is a code of ethics with anything you do, there should be a clear code of ethics with regards to humor as well. Like making a joke on someone's ethnicity, making a joke on someone's facial characteristics or something they can't change about their body, about their hair, about any of those things is a completely no-go thing. It gets too personal. So again, it's such a fine line, and there's like the thing is when you speak up against this, you could almost be seen as a party pooper or the humor police per se. And but it's very true that a lot of this humor and put downs, what you were talking about, when someone is triggered and they want to trigger someone, it's like I feel bad. I want to make sure someone else feels bad as well. So you can actually pull that off because it's so concealed, because it's become so mainstream that it's okay to do it. So you can actually be concealed in a concealed way, put down people, and that is one of the perils of humor and roasting someone when the other person is actually not on board.
That makes so much sense. And yet, what's come up is that, we are creating these rules of ethics for ourselves, right? This is where, I'm going to stop and I'm not going to indulge in this kind of humor. And what's really interesting is that with these rules of ethics, right, is that when we go to a stand-up comedy, right, all these ethics of ours, they actually break down. It's more like we're there and it feels appropriate to be there. And so it's just interesting that it's the same thing, but in one situation, we see it as not okay. And in another situation, we see it as okay. And I'm just wondering what the fine line is. I don't have an answer to this. I'm just putting this out here.
Yeah, no, it's good. You opened the can of worms actually there. It brings a lot of nostalgia for me. Like a few years back, I was very much in the bias comedy scene, like all the upcoming comics. I was a part of an improv troupe. So we would do all these gigs and there are upcoming comics and they are trying material, giving out good comedy, opening for big artists. So very much in the scene, week in, week out, like there would be 3 shows a week. And I would sit there so conflicted because I had started my journey on coaching, understanding myself, where I actually kind of let go of any sarcastic language in my own lingo, let go of seeing anything that can be a put off, to let go of it. So I'm cleaning up my language and I'm trying to clean up that. How do I want to show up in the world? And my whole idea is whether someone's a client or someone's whoever, I want to create a safe space. So that was the whole idea which I was working towards. But every second night I'm in a show and there is like jokes on people's faces, race, anything and everything. That is, the more inappropriate it is, the better. the more claps people get, because it's also like a little bit of a courage thing. Oh, this guy had the balls to say it. Like he just said it. Did he say it? Oh my God. So I could appreciate the art in some ways, but in other ways I was so conflicted because here I am, my whole life purpose is about being kind, and the other aspect of it is every second day I'm consuming this and I'm shaking my head. So it's a very difficult one, to be honest. I believe right now, it's a very simple thing. We are what we consume. Okay. So if I consume something without context, I am going to become that. So every time for me personally, it's very simple. If I see something which is very dysfunctional, say in a movie also, right? This is a very like dysfunctional love story where the guy is like taking drugs, being possessive about the girl, being very controlling, all of that. So mainstream movies or something is normalizing something which is very dysfunctional. So for me, at that moment, I'm telling myself, hey, this is dysfunctional. This is not okay. This is not what I stand for. Then I can actually watch the show, watch the movie with the right context that yes, people are out of balance and people do things which they have learned from people, from society and so forth. So I've mitigated it by getting a bit of context there, but the more you consume that, the more it becomes very colloquial. Like it's now part of me, part of what I do, because it's cool, because my favorite comedian does it. So if I do it, then it's okay, right?
Yeah, very interesting. So I'm just wondering that, we all put context in our life, but is the context just another story that we tell ourselves to actually justify that behavior?
Yeah, I think we all tell ourselves a story, right?
Absolutely.
Everything that's happening is one perception of it. It's my perspective of it. What I'm seeing, my day today was my perspective of it. It's not really the highest truth and the highest reality. So yeah, that's a difficult one to answer. I'm not sure what the answer is with that one, to be honest. But I feel personally there is space for humor in our lives, and there is a lot of need for safe space in our life. And I have a different take on sense of humor now. For me, sense of humor doesn't just come from doing a comedy set and all of that. For me, like, sense of humor now is basically a little bit more has a spiritual angle to it, and also how I live life angle to it. So basically, life with all of its twists and turns, when it gives you a whole unexpected turn, you have a laugh at it. So that is building up a sense of humor, that you don't get so swayed by life. Life, in all its trials and tribulations, we're all going to have something that's happening, suffering that's happening, family that passes away, a friendship that breaks, a relationship that is not anymore. Through all of that, there is especially for men, because men don't, to start off, the baseline is low, that the heart isn't as open. So when we find these things, that this thing happened with me, a tragedy happened with me, it could almost mean like I'm going to close my heart and protect it really, really strongly. I'm going to put a lot of layers around it because I can't handle it anymore. So in other words, life, when shit happens, we get really disheartened. And I feel that is the shortcut to illnesses, having a difficult life, being grumpy my entire life, and taking life too seriously and getting too like pessimistic about life. So for me, the concept of sense of humor is like, open your heart and don't take things to your heart so easily. And once you don't do that, you can actually honor things, you can actually learn things. So it's not about not learning from your mistakes, not about being not caring anymore. Actually opening your heart means I care enough, but I maintain that lightness, that ease, which means I have less resistance to life. So when things happen, I can actually accept it, because it's so exhausting, resisting. Why this happened to me? You have a story to say all your life. This happened to me in 1994. This happened to me. This was such a wrong thing that happened to me. And we hold on to that. That was me. This thing is me. That is me. So we get so disheartened. So from that perspective, sense of humor and that lightness and that ease is priceless.
I love the concept, and I think it's beautiful what you just said, right? It's priceless. And I'm completely with you there, is that when we make peace with our past, right, we can become lighter about it. And I'm just curious to know that, if somebody has something that's happened to that person, say, as you said, 2004, this happened, and I'm going to be like, achieve that lightness. It requires work, and it requires like that understanding to convert. So somebody who's still feeling the hurt, right, and still feeling the pain, because the pain and the hurt feels extremely real. It's almost like the brain, the way it acts is that it's acting as though that hurt and pain is happening right now. What would you tell that person if you had to tell him something?
So if the hurt is still real, if the hurt is still there, you treat it like a fresh wound. It's not very different from what we all know and how we all process a external injury. So I have a wound here, I have a very fresh wound. It means that if I have a very fresh wound on my shoulder, I'm not going to lift any shoulder, I'm not going to do any shoulder exercises. So I'm going to firstly try to heal it, try to process it, try to sit with it. So the first thing is to acknowledge that I have a wound, because most people don't acknowledge it but complain about it. It means that somehow they also feel that there's nothing that can be done from it. So I guess changing that mindset, that something happened to me and there's nothing I can do from it, absolutely nothing I can do from it, it's not true. You can learn from it, you can grow from it, you can forgive it, you can heal it. So there are a lot of things you can do with it. So firstly, attend to the wound. I can only attend to a wound if I know there's a wound and I acknowledge it. So acknowledge it that there's a wound. Then I'm going to heal the wound. So the healing practices can be, the modalities are numerous. We are thankfully, we are in an era where we are talking about coaching, therapy so openly. Everyone's talking about coaching, everyone's pro therapy, pro mental health. So you can go that route if you'd like. You can sit in meditation if you'd like. You can do a Reiki class if you'd like. You could do hypnotherapy with Ali if you like. So the options are endless. What is the right option for you? You choose. Like with any injury or wound, people have their own way and own process to it, but go try, have a process to it. So the process of healing, fixing it, rehabilitating it, and then slowly strengthening it has to be done. If you don't do it, you then become a person who's like, you know what, 2004 I got an injury here and it's my shoulder is bad. I've agreed to it, I've accepted it, and nothing can be done about it. It's done. My shoulder is bad. You can actually remove it also. It's just function. I just use my hand. That's why it is. But I'll complain about the pain every day. So that's the biggest thing. If we can change that mindset that there is something you can do about it, automatically acceptance. So to have the sense of humor, you need to, first step is to have acceptance, to have forgiveness. And then that process brings ease in. Once I agree, I accept, then the ease comes in and the heart opens. Then you actually see the funny side of it. Then you're like, you know what? From 2004 to 2018, I was actually talking about one same pain. Haha, how funny was I? I was stuck for 14 years. You know that? That was so hilarious. And actually, you find it hilarious. And there's no regret in it. There's only like laughter in it. And now you're over it. Now you're moving forward with what you have to do.
That's really interesting, Yogesh. And again, what I would say is that I think that it's like it always comes to a point that sometimes, right, at times dark humor can also be really funny. We can use that, like, just take something like that and use that. And it might not sound funny to anyone else. And it doesn't matter. As long as it can make you feel light and it can change your interpretation of what happened. That's the most important thing. That's exactly what matters in the end of the day. It doesn't matter whether anybody finds it or not. And so from that perspective, that like if it was dark humor, it can be extremely powerful as well. And I'm just looking at the time, and as always, we can go. I know that we can go on for another few hours if we had to. And just being conscious of time, if we were to end this right now, Yogesh, and if you had like one or two things to share, what would that be?
I would say have a sense of humor. There is also, I was reading about this. There's also something called the humorous effect. It's basically a cognitive bias within our mind, within our brain, where something that is funny is more memorable. So if you want to pitch something, you want your brand to be memorable. So you developing that sense of humor can really take you a long way. And from one context, the sense of humor can also mean being easy, having less resistance, having the ability to laugh at yourself. All of those will go a long way in us having healthy, productive lives, which actually can make an impact on the world. That's basically the power of sense of humor when used correctly.
That's amazing, Yogesh. And as you said that, and I'm just thinking about like what do I end with? And so I just randomly, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna end this with a joke. And I'm just Googling it. And as I'm talking to you, I'm trying to find one that's like remotely funny, but I think I've got like a website of a
You're like,
dad.
Chat GPT, tell me something funny.
Oh, I didn't go to Chat GPT. I wish I'd gone to Chat GPT. But and I've got this really sad joke, but I'm gonna say it anyways.
Please.
So the joke I've got is there are three types of people in this world: those who can count and those who can't count. I'm trying to still process the humor in this joke, but I'm gonna get there. That's what I've got from here. So as
Yes.
always, it's always a pleasure, having these conversations. As always, we're always trying to improve, bring more content, because through your ideas as well, we get ideas, and that helps us not only help other people but help us as well. So thank you so much once again. Please stay with us, smile, laugh, and have an awesome one. Take care.
Also, if you understood Ali's joke, please share with me.
Ciao for
See you
now.
guys.
Please, yes. If this podcast has benefited you in any way, then hit the follow and bell icons below. As always, this space is yours. So use the Q&A to put in your thoughts or your challenges. After all, so that little share of yours, you never know who you might be helping. Have a super awesome day.